Hey guys, tonight we drift into a night that has always carried a strange sort of weight. The kind of evening where the air feels heavier, cooler, and just slightly alive with whispers you can't quite hear. You probably won't survive this one without glancing over your shoulder at least once, even if only in your mind. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me in the comments where you are and what the local time is, because it's fun to imagine these shadows stretching across different corners of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Imagine yourself trudging through a fog-draped field somewhere in ancient Ireland, the kind of night where the moon is a thin crescent and the wind carries scents of wood smoke and damp earth. You've stumbled into Samhain, the Celtic festival that marks the end of the harvest and the beginning of the dark half of the year. Bonfires crackle along the hills, casting uneven light across crowds dressed in simple, rough-spun clothing, and you notice people carving turnips with jagged faces. Not just decoration, they're thought to hold away wandering spirits, both mischievous and malevolent. You realize this isn't just a festival. It's a liminal space, a bridge between the living and the dead, when the veil between worlds thins just enough to brush your shoulder with something otherworldly. Samhain itself was a practical celebration, too. Farmers used the festival to honor the harvest, stock up for winter, and perform rituals to protect themselves and their livestock. But alongside the mundane, there's the eerie. Tales of ghosts walking among the living, of spirits who could possess or curse, and of humans attempting to trick the unseen forces into leaving them unharmed. Historians still argue whether these rituals were primarily religious, social, or a mix of both, whether the fear of spirits drove the ceremonies or if the ceremonies created a framework for fearing spirits. Either way, you can feel the tension as you step carefully past the flickering fires, smelling smoke and roasted root vegetables, hearing the soft murmur of chants, and sensing that invisible audience of eyes just beyond the light. The bonfires themselves served multiple purposes. They were sources of warmth, centers for storytelling, and strangely enough, giant communal warding devices. People would carry embers back to their homes, thinking that a fragment of the sacred fire would keep their household safe until the next festival. Imagine lugging glowing coals in a clay pot across slippery grass, the heat pressing into your hands, while behind you, someone wears a mask fashioned from an animal skull, chanting in a voice half singing, half screaming. Fringe accounts suggest some even wore entire animal hides, trying to impersonate spirits themselves, dressing up as otherworldly creatures to confuse wandering ghosts. You shiver, partly from the cold and partly from the thought of accidentally bumping into one of these ghostly impersonators in the dark. As you wander closer to the center of the festival, you notice offerings laid on stones, small piles of grain, bits of food, and oddly shaped carvings. These weren't just symbolic. They were meant to appease the spirits, to ensure that misfortune didn't creep into the homes of the living. And yet, despite the seriousness, there's a playful side. People would leave tricks as well as treats, a hidden animal bone here, a cleverly disguised scare there, almost like a prelude to the trick part of modern Halloween. Historians debate whether these playful elements emerged naturally, or were deliberately inserted by elders to teach respect for the unseen world. You can imagine children darting around in the shadows, their laughter echoing like tiny ghosts, trying not to trip over the stones or the occasional startled adult. Food plays a part, too. The harvest itself dictates many of the dishes: nuts, apples, roasted meats, and here, the mundane and mystical blur. Apples might be tossed into water for divination, nuts cracked to reveal omens, and some records even suggest fermented beverages used in rituals to speak with the otherworldly. It's a night where the senses are heightened, the tang of smoke in your nose, the rough texture of straw underfoot, the uneven rhythm of drums or banging sticks signaling the climax of ceremonies. You feel that you're participating in something older than nations, older than towns, a ritual thread connecting countless generations who gazed at the same moonlit fields. The more you watch, the more you notice the duality: life and death, warmth and chill, fear and playfulness. Masks, fire, food, offerings. Each is a reminder that humans have long danced with the unknown, that our curiosity about death and what lies beyond has always been entwined with celebration. Some fringe sources even claim that certain Samhain rituals included shadowy contests of bravery, where young adults would dare each other into the woods, trying to meet spirits face to face. Whether true or exaggerated, the stories linger, much like the smoke that curls into the night sky, stubbornly refusing to dissipate. And somehow, this tension, this mixture of reverence and mischief, survives in the Halloween we recognize today. And so, as you step onto the path home, cradling your little glowing ember, you might feel a sense of connection, not just to the people who celebrated thousands of years ago, but to the very notion of Halloween itself. That delicate tension between awe and amusement, between caution and curiosity, is what makes the holiday linger in our collective imagination. Even now, when you pass a carved pumpkin on a doorstep, you're walking through shadows cast long ago, feeling, if only for a moment, the hush of an ancient night, and maybe, just maybe, a soft brush of something that doesn't belong entirely in this world. The moment you step away from the misty Samhain fields, the world seems slightly altered, though you hardly notice at first. The shadows of ancient bonfires linger in your mind like a faint perfume, and the memory of jagged turnips flickering against the dark still dances behind your eyelids. Time slides forward to a few centuries later, and you find yourself in a Europe that has begun blending old pagan rituals with the new Christian calendar. All Hallows' Eve, the night before All Saints' Day, is born, a curious compromise, a bridge between superstition and sanctioned celebration. It's easy to imagine that first monks scratching out instructions for villagers. Honor the saints, yes, but don't forget the spirits still wandering, or they might get mischievous. Historians still argue whether this merging was a strategic move to convert the masses peacefully, or simply a natural blending of popular traditions. Walking through the cobbled streets of medieval villages, you notice that fire remains central, though its meaning shifts. Bonfires are smaller, often ritualized by clergy who wave incense or holy water, attempting to sanctify what was once wild and untamed. Villagers wear masks less to impersonate spirits and more to emulate saints or demons, a theatrical compromise that allows everyone to play at something forbidden without actually invoking the wrath of the supernatural, or the local lord. Fringe accounts suggest that some villagers secretly continued the older practices, slipping offerings into shadows or leaving a candle for wandering souls, the two worlds existing side by side, hidden in plain sight. You might chuckle at the thought that your ancestors were probably just as cautious of ghosts as they were sneaky about avoiding ecclesiastical disapproval. The costumes themselves take on a new flavor. Instead of rough hides and skull masks, people begin to wear layered robes, pointed hats, or scraps stitched into jarring patterns. Theatricality blends with piety, creating an early form of theatrical Halloween cosplay, centuries before anyone dreamed of superheroes or vampires. You can almost hear a group of children whispering behind a church wall, daring one another to step too close to the bonfire or sneak a peek at a candle in someone's window. Tiny rebellions wrapped in ritual. And yet, in some regions, peasants were ordered to perform small acts of penance or deliver food to the poor on All Hallows' Eve, a reminder that even as the night teetered on the edge of chaos, society sought to maintain order. Food traditions begin to change, too. The simple grains and root vegetables of Samhain are joined by sweetened breads and cakes, often shaped in ways that resemble saints, ghosts, or little animals. Some regions develop the odd custom of leaving these treats on windowsills as an offering to the poor or to wandering spirits. You sense that even centuries ago, people were discovering the subtle psychology of generosity and superstition intertwined, an early precursor to the trick-or-treat concept that would evolve much later. Historians still argue whether this was purely charitable or a cleverly disguised attempt to keep mischievous spirits and children alike from wreaking havoc, though watching children's eyes widen as they spot a sweet loaf on the sill makes you wonder if intent ever truly mattered. You wander past stone churches with flickering lanterns, their shadows stretching long across narrow streets. The night is alive with the murmurs of villagers telling ghost stories or recounting the deeds of saints. Masks hide nervous smiles, whispered warnings about spirits are exchanged, and somewhere, a child drops a small loaf and squeals as a neighbor catches it in jest. Even in its more civilized form, the edge of fear remains. That's the paradox of All Hallows' Eve. It sanitizes, structures, and organizes the old chaos, yet it preserves the thrill of not knowing what might be watching from the shadows. You feel it, too, a little thrill of anticipation curling in your stomach as you step over puddles reflecting candlelight. The landscape itself seems to participate. Bare trees scratch the sky like skeletal fingers, and wind slides through alleyways carrying the faint scent of smoke and roasting nuts. You notice how these elements, the cold air, the flickering light, the scent of earth and fire, work together to heighten perception. Even today, Halloween's sensory design owes a debt to this careful orchestration. Sight, sound, smell, touch, all align to make the night feel slightly unreal. Fringe chroniclers claim that in some villages, the night concluded with a silent procession, everyone holding a candle and moving in eerie circles around the parish boundaries to ensure that wandering spirits were coaxed home. Whether ritual, superstition, or pure performance, the effect on the community was unmistakable. A shared, collective experience of wonder and fear, imagination running wild under controlled conditions. And so, as the night winds down in these medieval streets, you can almost see how All Hallows' Eve set the stage for the modern holiday we know. The firelight is smaller, the masks more symbolic, and the chaos tamed by religion and social expectation. But the thrill, the sense that anything might happen, that the unseen world is brushing your shoulder, still lingers. You notice how easily the playful mischief, the hints of fortune-telling, and the ghostly whispers have been preserved, tucked into the folds of culture like a secret everyone knows but no one openly admits. It's a night balanced delicately between reverence and revelry, where shadows are not just feared, they are invited. By the time you step past the churchyard and into a quieter lane, the night feels strangely familiar, even if the rituals are long gone. All Hallows' Eve reminds you that traditions evolve, that fear can be shaped into entertainment, and that humans, across centuries, have always loved a good story to walk through the dark with. Every carved pumpkin, every whispered ghost story, every flickering candle is a faint echo of this careful balancing act, where sacred and profane, fear and fun, mingle like smoke curling into the moonlit air. The flicker of candlelight still clings to your memory as you wander into the story of pumpkin carving, a tradition far older than the bright orange gourds that now dominate lawns across the world. Picture yourself in a dimly lit kitchen somewhere in Ireland or Scotland, centuries ago, holding a hollowed-out turnip with a crude face carved into its waxy flesh. The earliest jack-o'-lanterns weren't cheerful or funny. They were grim, meant to frighten away wandering spirits and, occasionally, nosy neighbors. Historians still argue whether the original turnip lanterns were inspired by real human fears of the dead or by a more playful spirit of communal mischief, but either way, the effect was potent. You can practically feel the weight of that flickering candle inside the hollow vegetable, casting monstrous shadows against the walls, while someone mutters a chant to ward off what might be lurking just outside. Interestingly, not all regions embraced turnips. In some parts of Scotland, hollowed-out beets were preferred, while in Cornwall, lanterns were carved from large potatoes. The variety of vegetables suggests that people were both resourceful and ritualistic, choosing what was available while keeping the essence of the practice intact. Some fringe accounts even describe elaborate carvings that required a full day's work, transforming a humble root into grotesque faces meant to amuse, scare, and sometimes honor specific spirits. Imagine families crowded around a fire, trading carving tips, passing knives cautiously, and joking about whose turnip looked more like a mischievous ghost. That same night, a cat might slip silently past, its shadow merging with the flickering shapes on the walls, an early hint of the ominous symbolism that would later be assigned to black cats and Halloween. It wasn't until Irish immigrants reached America that pumpkins, large and bright orange, became the preferred medium. The native pumpkin was far easier to hollow and carve than turnips or beets, and its size allowed for more elaborate designs. You can picture the first pumpkin lanterns wobbling in the night air, their candle flames flickering in rhythm with the wind, as families placed them on windowsills and doorsteps. The name, jack-o'-lantern, itself comes from the legend of Stingy Jack, a man who tricked the devil and was doomed to roam the earth with only a carved turnip to light his way. You might chuckle at the thought that a centuries-old cautionary tale is now the centerpiece of a friendly holiday decoration, glowing gently on a suburban porch. Carving also carried symbolic meaning. The jagged mouths and hollow eyes weren't just for fun, they were intended to confuse spirits, to give them something terrifying to look at so that they would leave the living alone. You notice a pattern. Much of Halloween's history balances fear with clever play, turning potentially terrifying concepts into something manageable, even enjoyable. Fringe historians suggest that some carvings were used as a form of folk art, expressing personal anxieties or desires through grotesque imagery. One could almost read a family's fears in the shapes and patterns, though, of course, this is speculative. Still, the idea that a carved pumpkin could communicate private thoughts to unseen observers is strangely comforting, or maybe just slightly unsettling. The communal aspect of carving is another thread worth noticing. In smaller villages, families would gather and compete over the most inventive lanterns, and older villagers might offer cryptic advice about what symbols would attract good spirits or repel bad ones. The night air was filled with laughter, smoke, and the faint tang of roasted vegetables, while shadows danced across walls and ceilings. You might imagine a young child nervously holding a candle inside a pumpkin, their hand shaking slightly, and an older sibling teasing them about ghosts lurking nearby. These early rituals weren't just about keeping evil away, they were exercises in creativity, cooperation, and storytelling, all under the guise of superstition. Even today, the act of carving a pumpkin carries echoes of these old communal experiences, linking modern households to centuries of ritual practice. Another curious facet is the role of humor. While some jack-o'-lanterns were terrifying, others were absurd, sporting wide, goofy grins or eyes that seemed slightly cross-eyed. This mixture of fright and amusement seems like a primitive form of what we now consider spooky fun. Anthropologists speculate that humor may have been a psychological strategy, helping people confront the idea of death and misfortune without being paralyzed by fear. You can almost feel that delicate tension yourself. The shadows are long and eerie, yet the faces carved into turnips, or pumpkins, elicit a nervous laugh. The night becomes a space where humans engage with mortality and superstition playfully, and in that sense, every flickering lantern is a tiny act of courage. By the time pumpkin carving arrives in full force in America, the practice has undergone centuries of transformation, yet its essence remains remarkably consistent. The dual purpose, warding off the unseen while entertaining the living, is as alive now as it was then. And as you trace your fingers along the ridged curves of a modern pumpkin, cutting through the soft flesh and hearing the scrape of the knife, you can almost sense the centuries of hands that did the same. The tradition is part artistry, part superstition, part social glue, and part playful thrill, a balance that Halloween continues to maintain. Remember, that flickering candle inside your jack-o'-lantern isn't just light, it's a whisper from the past, a connection to all those ancient nights when humans dared to peer into the dark and shape it with their own hands. As the pumpkin's glow fades in your memory, you feel yourself slipping into the story of Halloween costumes, a tradition that blends fear, playfulness, and a touch of social commentary. Imagine yourself walking through a medieval village at dusk, the smell of roasted chestnuts in the air, watching townsfolk draped in cloaks, masks, and scraps of fabric that resemble animal hides or exaggerated human features. Originally, disguises served a practical purpose. They were meant to confuse or frighten wandering spirits, keeping them from recognizing and haunting the living. But there was also a social dimension. Throughout history, clothing has communicated status, and Halloween costumes allowed people, even children, to temporarily escape their societal roles. Historians still argue whether these disguises were more about spiritual protection or social satire, but it's easy to see how both motives could coexist in one night. The earliest records of costuming often include strange and humorous elements. Some villagers wore masks with oversized noses, grotesque grins, or exaggerated eyes, while others carried sticks or props to complete their transformation. Fringe accounts suggest that, in some regions, entire groups would coordinate their costumes to resemble legendary spirits or local supernatural figures, effectively putting on a moving play for neighbors. You can imagine tripping over a bundle of cloaks and masks as children dashed past, trying to scare each other with barely disguised ghosts or demons. Even today, when kids grab superhero capes or animal onesies, the core idea is strikingly similar. Adopt another identity, however temporary, and explore the thrill of being someone, or something, else. Costumes also became a way to negotiate community rules. In certain villages, wearing a mask or cloak allowed you to wander streets freely, play pranks, or ask for treats without immediate retribution. The anonymity created a unique social tension. Everyone knew the rules of the game, but no one could fully enforce them when faces were hidden. You can almost hear the hushed laughter as someone tiptoes past a neighbor's doorway, disguised as a skeleton or mythical creature, hoping to escape detection. Fringe historians argue that these costuming practices may have been a subtle form of rebellion, letting the lower classes poke fun at authority while still appearing to respect the ritual framework of the night. You sense the thrill yourself, remembering the moments when anonymity offers a taste of freedom even today. Some of the oddest costumes didn't just imitate spirits, they exaggerated human flaws or local gossip. Masks might mimic an overly greedy neighbor, a particularly grumpy town elder, or the village idiot, a way for people to comment on each other without confrontation. The idea of humor intertwined with fear seems consistent. The grotesque serves as both entertainment and subtle moral instruction. You can picture a group of children giggling behind a hedge, pretending to be witches or hags, whispering warnings about imaginary curses, while adults glance out windows, part amused, part concerned. These playful exaggerations demonstrate how costumes were more than clothing. They were tools for storytelling, moral guidance, and communal bonding, all wrapped in a shroud of festive fright. Another intriguing angle is the use of masks and costumes in fortune-telling and ritual. In some traditions, a person might wear a specific disguise to attract the attention of certain spirits or to predict future events. For instance, a mask shaped like a particular animal could be used to invoke traits or outcomes associated with that creature, a curious precursor to modern symbolic dressing and even psychological priming. You can almost feel the subtle tension as villagers select their disguises carefully, considering which form might offer protection, insight, or just the best chance at a harmless scare. Even today, when you choose a costume, there's a lingering sense of performing both identity and fate, a playful nod to centuries-old beliefs. By the time Halloween reaches America, costumes have expanded far beyond the original spiritual intentions. The theatricality becomes central, blending elements of European folklore, commercial availability, and local creativity. Children and adults alike experiment with elaborate disguises, from witches and ghosts to more contemporary characters, and the idea of trick-or-treating intertwines with the performative nature of costuming. You notice that even subtle details, a crooked hat, painted face, or exaggerated cloak, carry echoes of those first attempts to confuse spirits or amuse neighbors. Fringe sources suggest that early 20th century costume parties also served as a way for communities to rehearse social norms and hierarchies in a playful, semi-controlled environment, a practice that continues subtly in how people select costumes today. As you walk through streets lined with carved pumpkins, glowing softly in the night, you realize that costumes are more than clothing. They are a living history, a playful dialogue between fear, humor, identity, and community. Each mask, cloak, or outfit represents centuries of ritual, mischief, and imagination, reminding us that Halloween's heart beats strongest when we dare to become someone, or something, else, even if only for a few hours. The thrill of transformation, the subtle commentary on society, and the echoes of ancient superstition all swirl together in that simple act of dressing up. Every costume you've ever worn carries a whisper from the past, a shadow of the long nights when humans first danced between fear and fun. The faint laughter from costumed children fades into memory as you slip into the origins of trick-or-treating, a practice that is both charming and oddly mysterious. Imagine a chilly medieval evening, when villagers carry small baskets of food or coins, knocking on neighbors' doors, not for candy but for blessings, prayers, or a share of the harvest. The tradition's early forms were practical. Souling, as it was called, involved giving small cakes to the poor in exchange for prayers for the dead. You might picture a child clutching a round cake wrapped in cloth, nervously stepping up to a darkened doorway, heart pounding as they recite a short prayer. Historians still argue whether these exchanges were more about genuine piety, social cohesion, or simply keeping mischievous spirits, or children, from creating chaos. Across various regions, these rituals took surprising turns. In some Irish and Scottish communities, children and adults would perform brief songs or small acts, miniature performances, almost like a precursor to modern street theater, before receiving treats. Fringe sources mention entire neighborhoods competing for the most clever recitations, sometimes even improvising rhymes to appease the spirits of the dead. You can almost hear the giggles and whispered critiques as a young participant nervously finishes a rhyme, hoping to earn a coin instead of a sideways glance from the household head. There's a clear sense that performance, reward, and fear of supernatural retribution were intertwined, a combination that would eventually evolve into the playful trick-or-treat dynamic we recognize today. In some areas, the line between spiritual ritual and mischievous pranking was even blurrier. Groups of young adults would roam streets disguised, demanding small offerings or threatening mild mischief if denied. This is where the trick part of trick-or-treating emerges. You can imagine a neighbor quietly hiding behind a doorframe as a masked group theatrically demands a piece of bread, each participant exaggerating gestures to appear more terrifying or amusing than they actually are. Historians still argue whether the trick aspect began as a form of social enforcement, ensuring fairness in the distribution of offerings, or whether it emerged purely from human delight in playful chaos. Either way, the dynamic adds tension to the night, balancing generosity with a touch of fear, and you can sense that same tension echoing in modern Halloween neighborhoods. The foods and coins given during souling were not uniform. Some traditions include special soul cakes, lightly sweetened pastries, while others involved small baked goods or symbolic tokens. You might notice that these humble offerings weren't just for sustenance. They carried symbolic weight, acting as miniature bridges between the living and the dead, gestures of remembrance and respect. Fringe historians speculate that some families deliberately included unusual ingredients or charms to increase the spiritual potency of the cakes, or perhaps simply to amuse themselves and their children. Imagine the thrill of biting into a slightly strange-flavored cake while hoping it will ward off wandering spirits, a mix of culinary curiosity and superstition that feels surprisingly alive even today. When trick-or-treating finally crosses the Atlantic with Irish and Scottish immigrants, the tradition adapts. Pumpkins replace turnips, candy replaces cakes, and the act of door-to-door exchanges becomes firmly associated with children. Communities formalize routes, and Halloween begins to emphasize playful performance over spiritual obligation. Yet traces of the old practices remain: the anticipation of approaching a darkened door, the recitation of rhymes or jokes, and the sense that something unseen could be watching from shadows. Fringe accounts suggest some early American towns even had neighborhood competitions for the best decorated doorways, subtly blending the performance element of old souling with new community entertainment. There's a subtle psychological twist, too. Trick-or-treating allows children to confront small fears in a controlled environment, knocking on doors of strangers, navigating dimly lit streets, and experiencing mild suspense. You can feel the echoes of this in your own nervous excitement, remembering the thrill of approaching a porch decorated with glowing pumpkins or creepy figures, unsure whether the occupant will reward your courage with a candy bar or a playful scare. This combination of fear, performance, and reward seems remarkably consistent across centuries, a testament to the resilience of human imagination and the way traditions evolve to remain meaningful. Even the trick component serves a deeper purpose. It's not just about mischief, it's about negotiating social bonds, testing courage, and establishing a playful hierarchy. Children learn timing, persuasion, and improvisation, skills that, centuries ago, might have been essential in navigating the unpredictable night of All Hallows' Eve. You might smile at the thought that your modern candy hall carries echoes of centuries of ritual, performance, and strategy, each chocolate bar a small testament to human creativity and the enduring desire to connect, perform, and survive the night with a little flair. By the time evening fades into night, you realize that trick-or-treating is far more than cute costumes and candy. It is an evolution of centuries-old rituals, blending spirituality, performance, and community in ways that are both playful and slightly thrilling. The night invites participation, encourages creativity, and, most importantly, keeps the thrill of the unknown alive. Every step down a dimly lit street, every knock on a neighbor's door, echoes the steps of children long ago, carrying with it centuries of tradition, mischief, and imagination. You're not just collecting candy, you're part of a story that stretches back to the very origins of Halloween itself. As the echoes of trick-or-treating fade behind you, the night pulls you toward haunted houses and folklore, a place where the line between reality and imagination blurs more vividly than anywhere else. Picture yourself stepping cautiously along a narrow, mist-shrouded street lined with crumbling stone buildings, their windows shuttered, chimneys smoldering faintly. Villagers whisper about haunted estates where lights flicker despite the absence of candle flames, and the occasional groan of a door hinge sets your nerves on edge. Ghost stories were once the backbone of community storytelling, a shared entertainment that warned, delighted, and fascinated. Historians still argue whether tales of haunted houses primarily served as moral instruction, as a method of social control, or simply as a way to keep children from wandering too far after dark. Either way, you can feel the thrill pressing gently against your chest as the stories unfold in your imagination. The origins of haunted houses trace back to superstition mingled with real-life tragedies. Manor houses, abandoned churches, and battlefields all became fertile ground for ghostly legends. In some cases, the haunting was tied to an unresolved injustice or a tragic death. In others, the eerie reputation grew from purely imaginative gossip. Fringe accounts suggest that some landlords even encouraged rumors of hauntings to deter unwanted visitors or travelers, creating a deliberately spooky aura that would make their property seem off-limits after sunset. You might shiver just imagining how cleverly orchestrated creaks and shadows could convince a nervous visitor that spirits were indeed lurking. Stories themselves often incorporated playful, interactive elements. Ghosts might leave faintly glowing marks on windows, moan when the wind shifted, or appear in a flash of reflected candlelight. Practical illusions mixed with imaginative storytelling. Villagers would gather around fires, recounting tales that ranged from the genuinely chilling to the absurdly comedic, such as a ghost caught stealing a neighbor's turnip or haunting a cat for daring to cross its path. You notice that humor and fright coexist, much like in the jack-o'-lantern or early costume traditions. The stories warn, amuse, and entertain simultaneously, teaching the listener to respect the unseen while enjoying the thrill of suspense. Haunted folklore was also a way to negotiate social anxieties. Certain houses, often those of the wealthy or powerful, were imbued with ghostly reputations that reflected resentment, envy, or fear. Masks and shadows played into these tales, reinforcing the idea that unseen forces could mirror human behavior, trickery, greed, cruelty. Fringe historians speculate that some ghost stories were intentionally exaggerated to reinforce social norms, reminding people of the consequences of transgression in a form that was both frightening and memorable. You can feel the layers of meaning intertwining as you imagine standing near a shadowy corner, trying to convince yourself it's just a draft, not a lingering spirit with something to prove. Some haunted tales were tied to natural phenomena, too. Echoing sounds in empty halls, shifting shadows from the moon, or unexpected reflections from polished surfaces. The night itself becomes a participant, shaping the narrative and heightening suspense. You sense the delicate interplay of environment, imagination, and tradition that transforms a simple house into a site of enduring fascination. Even today, haunted attractions borrow heavily from these early principles. Dim lighting, sudden noises, strategic shadows, and a narrative that encourages the participant to suspend disbelief. It's striking how centuries-old storytelling techniques persist, even in neon-lit modern amusement parks. Interestingly, the communal aspect of ghost lore often mirrored the earlier communal rituals of Samhain. Families and neighbors shared stories not only for entertainment but to impart lessons, honor the dead, and maintain a sense of collective vigilance against the unknown. You might picture elders guiding children through the shadows, pointing out creaking floors and whispering half-stories designed to spark curiosity and caution. Fringe scholars note that these practices may have served to subtly educate young members about boundaries, both physical and social, wrapped in the delightfully spooky packaging of ghost stories. By the time you leave the haunted street behind, the sense of narrative continuity is palpable. The chilling thrill of imagined spirits, the subtle moral lessons, and the communal laughter all merge into a sensory tapestry that is unmistakably Halloween. Every modern haunted house, every whispered ghost story told around a flickering screen, echoes the centuries-old desire to explore fear safely, to confront the unknown through story, and to share that experience with others. Even as the shadows recede, you carry a faint thrill, a reminder that Halloween has always been a night for stories that straddle the line between reality and imagination, delight and dread. The lingering chill from haunted houses guides you into the strange world of apple bobbing and divination, where simple games carry layers of ritual, superstition, and surprisingly serious fortune-telling. Imagine yourself kneeling beside a large wooden barrel filled with water, the scent of crisp autumn apples mingling with the faint smoke from distant fires. The goal seems simple: bite into an apple without using your hands. But historically, this was more than a playful challenge. It was a test of dexterity, luck, and, subtly, your future. Historians still debate whether apple bobbing originated primarily as a courting ritual, a means of divination, or simply a communal pastime designed to keep the restless entertained. Either way, the apples gleam enticingly, reflecting the dim candlelight and your eager anticipation. In early British and Irish traditions, each apple carried a symbolic meaning. Sometimes, a young woman would pick her apple first, and the result of her bite could predict her romantic future, a whimsical yet oddly anxiety-inducing practice. Fringe sources claim that certain varieties of apples were considered luckier than others, and selecting the wrong one could supposedly doom a romantic prospect or indicate a minor misfortune. You can almost feel the tension, leaning over the barrel, hoping for a perfect bite while friends quietly snicker or offer cryptic advice, blending superstition with gentle competition. Even today, the thrill persists, though modern participants are more likely to laugh than to fear divine consequences. Beyond romance, apple-based games extended into broader divination. People might float objects in water alongside the apples, observing which way they drifted to predict future events. Some versions involved placing coins or small charms inside the apples, turning a simple bite into a mini oracle. Fringe accounts suggest that families sometimes used these games to make more serious decisions, choosing who would host a gathering, who might marry next, or even when to plant crops in the following spring. You notice a subtle rhythm, Halloween blends entertainment and risk, the ordinary and the supernatural, into one playful, communal ritual. Other fruit-based fortune-telling games added layers of complexity. Some villages practiced apple peel tossing, where the peel was carefully cut in one long strip, tossed over the shoulder, and the shape it formed on the ground supposedly spelled out the initial of a future spouse. Imagine the tension as a slender peel arcs through the air, landing in an unpredictable curl. Children would hold their breath, parents would offer knowing smiles, and the night air would hum with quiet suspense. These practices, though seemingly quaint, reveal the deep-rooted human fascination with glimpsing the unknown and using playful methods to navigate uncertainty. Even simple objects like nuts, mirrors, or candle flames became instruments of Halloween divination. Apples, though, remained central, perhaps because their round shape, floating ability, and association with harvest abundance made them particularly symbolic. Fringe historians argue that apple-based games may have served as subtle preparation for adult responsibilities, teaching children to interpret outcomes, tolerate uncertainty, and engage in social negotiation under the guise of fun. You can feel that continuity as you consider modern Halloween games, candy rituals, and playful dares. Underneath the surface, humans are practicing courage, anticipation, and social skill, just as they did centuries ago. The sensory experience amplifies the effect. Cold air tingling your cheeks, water splashing lightly on your hands, the sweet smell of apples, and the hushed murmurs of friends create an atmosphere perfectly tuned for suspense. Even a small misstep, biting the wrong part of an apple, dropping it in the water, feels momentous, heightening emotional engagement. It's easy to understand why these games persisted, spreading alongside other Halloween traditions. Play, superstition, and tactile engagement merge seamlessly, giving participants a subtle thrill that mirrors more overtly frightening rituals like visiting haunted houses or wearing masks. As you finally lift your head from the barrel, apple dripping and cheeks flushed, you notice a faint pattern connecting all these customs. Halloween isn't simply a night of fear or indulgence. It's a carefully layered experience where play, superstition, performance, and social learning intertwine. Whether floating apples, tossing peels, or interpreting mysterious drifts of coins, every small ritual teaches patience, observation, and imagination. And as you step away from the barrel, the night air rich with the scent of autumn leaves and distant smoke, you realize that each tiny Halloween game, however quaint, is a living echo of centuries-old attempts to understand the unpredictable, to invite fortune, or mischief, into human hands, and to navigate the night with courage, curiosity, and a little playful dread. The crisp scent of apples and autumn leaves fades, and your thoughts drift to black cats, the silent companions of Halloween superstition. Imagine yourself walking along a narrow, moonlit path, the shadows of trees stretching like skeletal fingers across the ground, when a sleek black cat darts across your path, its eyes glinting in the faint light. You pause, feeling that inexplicable shiver that generations of humans have felt before you. Black cats became symbols of misfortune and witchcraft, their dark for making them perfect candidates for folklore about evil omens. Historians still argue whether the fear of black cats arose from association with witches, general superstition, or simple human pattern-seeking, but the effect is undeniable. These creatures earned a strange, lasting prominence in Halloween imagery. In medieval Europe, black cats were often linked to witches' familiars, believed to carry messages or even curses between the spirit world and humans. Fringe accounts suggest that some households would deliberately keep black cats inside during Halloween, thinking it might confuse wandering spirits or draw them away from vulnerable family members. You can picture a child tiptoeing past a curled-up cat, hoping it doesn't leap suddenly and reveal its supposed supernatural allegiance. This tension between fear and fascination echoes throughout the night. Black cats simultaneously inspire caution, curiosity, and a subtle thrill, a perfect companion for a holiday built on mystery and imagination. Interestingly, not all cultures viewed black cats negatively. In some parts of the world, they were considered good luck, guardians against evil, or even symbols of prosperity. You might smile at the irony. The same creature that sends shivers down one person's spine could be a cherished omen for another. Fringe folklorists note that this duality reflects broader patterns in Halloween history, where objects and creatures are rarely purely feared or revered. They are both, depending on context, time, and cultural perspective. You can almost see the echoes of this duality in Halloween decorations today. Cute black cat figurines share space with ghoulish witches and skeletons, maintaining that delicate balance of fright and charm. Black cats also highlight the intersection of superstition with everyday life. Farmers feared them as predictors of crop failure, merchants worried they might signal financial ruin, and children hesitated to approach them while trick-or-treating. Yet the fascination was irresistible. The mystery, the unpredictability, and the inherent grace of a black cat moving silently through shadows captured the imagination. Fringe historians speculate that stories about black cats were sometimes exaggerated to keep children close to home or reinforce social boundaries, much like ghost stories or costume rules. You can feel the same mixture of awe and apprehension as you imagine these encounters, fear tempered by curiosity and delight. As Halloween traveled across the Atlantic, black cats remained central symbols of the holiday, sometimes overshadowing other folkloric elements. American households embraced the idea of black cats as eerie companions, decorating porches with cutouts or figurines that cast long shadows in candlelight. You might notice how subtle cultural shifts affect symbolism. The same cat that once protected a household in one country becomes a mischievous omen in another. Fringe historians debate whether commercialization amplified this fear or merely reflected pre-existing anxieties about the unknown. Either way, the effect is striking. Black cats remain emblematic of Halloween's delicate dance between superstition, entertainment, and shared cultural memory. By the time you continue down the lane, the figure of the black cat lingers at the edge of your imagination, its presence both comforting and unnerving. It reminds you that Halloween is not just about the dramatic, overtly scary elements, the bonfires, masks, or haunted houses, but also about subtle encounters with symbols that quietly influence perception and emotion. Every cat, every shadow, every glint of reflective eyes in the night is part of a centuries-old conversation about fear, luck, and curiosity. As you step over a fallen leaf and feel the soft crunch beneath your feet, you recognize that black cats, like so many other Halloween symbols, persist because they engage something deep in human nature, a fascination with the unknown, a thrill of suspense, and a playful flirtation with danger that is both timeless and oddly comforting. The image of a black cat slipping through shadows fades, and you find yourself drawn into the darker history of Halloween, the chilling overlap with witch trials and the persecution of those accused of sorcery. Imagine walking through a foggy European village in the late 16th century, the smell of damp earth and smoke thick in the air, while townsfolk whisper about a woman rumored to consort with spirits. Masks, costumes, and jack-o'-lanterns take on new layers of meaning here. They are no longer just playful or protective, but echoes of a genuine fear that could cost someone their life. Historians still argue whether Halloween's spooky imagery was directly shaped by these trials, or if the holiday merely absorbed the broader cultural fascination with witches, but the connection is undeniable. In England and Scotland, accused witches were often described as having familiars, cats, owls, or small animals that aided in magic. These creatures, and by extension the humans who supposedly controlled them, were feared and shunned, their reputations woven into local lore. Fringe accounts suggest that some families kept warnings about suspected witches near windows or doors, subtly reinforcing social norms and superstition while participating in Halloween traditions. You might imagine passing a crooked sign in the flickering candlelight, half warning, half playful reminder, blending fear and celebration in a way that seems uniquely human. Costumes and masks during this period were sometimes deliberately designed to imitate witches, demons, or other feared figures. Young villagers might don pointed hats or ragged cloaks, both in homage to the stories and as a way to confront their anxieties safely. The act of dressing as something terrifying became a protective charm, an almost psychological ritual to master fear by embodying it. You notice the subtle brilliance of this tradition. By pretending to be a witch or demon, participants could engage with frightening concepts without falling victim to them. Fringe historians even suggest that the playful exaggeration of witches in masks and performances may have served as satire, allowing communities to mock their own fears while reinforcing moral lessons. Food and offerings also intersect with the shadow of witchcraft. Special cakes or pastries might be left out to appease spirits, or to symbolically counteract the supposed influence of witches. In some accounts, herbs or charms were baked into treats as a form of protection, blending culinary creativity with superstition. Imagine a family carefully hiding a small protective charm inside a cake, thinking it might safeguard a child during the night, all while laughing at the absurdity of their own precaution. These small rituals underscore how Halloween merges the serious and the playful, turning fear into a tangible, participatory experience. The witch trials themselves cast a long shadow on Halloween imagery. The fascination with witches, their pointed hats, broomsticks, and familiars, feeds directly into the visual vocabulary of the holiday. You can see the echoes in modern costumes, decorations, and media portrayals. Witches are terrifying, magical, and a little ridiculous, all at once. Fringe sources note that some of these portrayals were deliberately exaggerated to entertain, teach lessons, or strengthen social cohesion. You might chuckle at the idea that centuries-old fear has transformed into cartoonish charm, yet beneath it lies a memory of genuine danger and human cruelty, softened by distance and cultural adaptation. Even today, when you glance at a Halloween display featuring witches flying past a moonlit sky, you are witnessing centuries of layered meaning. The holiday absorbs history, myth, fear, and humor, wrapping them in a narrative that is both playful and educational. Every pointed hat, broomstick, and black cat is a subtle nod to a time when superstition could dictate life or death, reminding you that Halloween is not just a spectacle. It is a living archive of human imagination confronting the unknown. You feel the eerie thrill of standing in that long chain of observers and participants, connected across generations by shared fascination, caution, and creativity. In this way, the holiday continues to transform fear into fascination, just as it did centuries ago, allowing you to experience the shadowy thrill of history in a safe, playful light. The chill of witch trials and shadowy streets begins to give way to the sweeter side of Halloween, candy. Imagine yourself in a modest 19th century kitchen, the air thick with the scent of sugar, molasses, and spice, as a mother carefully prepares small treats for children. Candy wasn't always the colored, perfectly molded chocolates and gummies you're used to today. Early sweets included hard candies, taffy, and sometimes even unusual flavors like licorice infused with herbs or spiced nuts, the kind that make you pause and wonder if anyone truly enjoyed them. Historians still argue about when exactly candy became the central treat of Halloween, but what's clear is that its rise parallels the holiday's increasing commercialization and focus on children's participation. Some of the earliest recorded Halloween confections were symbolic. Soul cakes remained popular in certain regions, pastries designed to honor the dead and ensure spiritual protection. You can picture a young child nervously carrying one from house to house, its simple sweetness a bridge between human generosity and supernatural superstition. Fringe sources suggest that some families experimented with unusual ingredients, perhaps to enhance the mystical effect or simply to amuse themselves. Imagine biting into a cake with unexpected flavors and trying to discern whether the odd taste is a culinary misfire or a deliberate nod to tradition. It's a small thrill that mirrors the broader tension of Halloween between expectation and surprise. By the time Halloween crossed the Atlantic, candy began to dominate. Irish and Scottish immigrants brought traditions of sweets and small treats, but the abundance of sugar and the Industrial Revolution's confectionery advances transformed the landscape. You can almost see children rushing through streets, baskets in hand, eager to collect anything sweet offered, the excitement tempered by the thrill of being out after dark. Early American candies included candy corn, peppermint sticks, and homemade caramels, often prepared by neighborhood families for children. Fringe historians note that the proliferation of candy was partly a practical solution. Sugar was inexpensive, non-perishable, and easily portioned, making it ideal for communal distribution during a night of rituals, mischief, and performance. The psychology behind candy is fascinating. Just as costumes and jack-o'-lanterns allowed participants to confront fear playfully, candy offered a tangible reward for bravery and performance. Knocking on doors, reciting rhymes, or performing small acts became exercises in social negotiation and courage, rewarded with sugary treats. You can almost feel your own pulse quicken as a child, approaching a shadowy porch, unsure of the homeowner's reaction, but thrilled by the promise of a candy reward. This combination of suspense, performance, and gratification is part of what gives Halloween its enduring emotional resonance, tying together centuries of playful superstition and communal engagement. Even the odd flavors and homemade experiments reflect cultural curiosity. People experimented with spices, herbs, and local ingredients, creating confections that were as much about storytelling and tradition as they were about sweetness. Some candies were deliberately shaped or flavored to reflect local legends or rituals. A tiny edible ghost here, a sugar witch there, blurring the line between play, superstition, and culinary art. Fringe historians suggest that these practices were an early form of narrative teaching, subtly reinforcing cultural stories while indulging children in harmless fun. You can imagine the delight and slight confusion of biting into a candy shaped like a tiny ghost, the sugar rush mingling with the thrill of a centuries-old tradition. By the time candy became mass-produced in the 20th century, Halloween had firmly cemented itself as a holiday for children, blending the sweet, the playful, and the mildly scary. Every chocolate bar, lollipop, or candy corn you see today is a descendant of these older traditions, carrying centuries of ritual, superstition, and communal enjoyment. The night is sweeter now, but the thrill remains. The anticipation, the surprise, the tiny triumph of performance rewarded. You feel it as you imagine walking through a dimly lit neighborhood, basket heavy with treats, the ghosts, masks, and black cats of history whispering faintly in your mind. Candy, in its simplest form, becomes a symbol of connection, continuity, and the playful negotiation between fear, delight, and community that defines Halloween across centuries. The sugary thrill of candy begins to fade, and now your attention turns to the power of storytelling. How scary tales and literature have shaped Halloween into the narrative-rich holiday we know today. Imagine yourself curled near a fire in a dimly lit parlor, the shadows of flickering flames stretching across the walls, while someone recites a chilling tale of restless spirits or cursed objects. Even before Halloween became a commercialized celebration, storytelling was central to the night, allowing communities to explore fear safely, bond socially, and pass down warnings or lessons. Historians still argue whether early ghost stories were primarily cautionary tales, entertainment, or a mix of both, but it's clear that narrative has always been a core component of the holiday. The influence of Gothic literature cannot be overstated. Works like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein or Washington Irving's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow introduced readers to eerie atmospheres, morally complex specters, and suspenseful tension, all perfect ingredients for Halloween storytelling. Fringe accounts suggest that these tales were sometimes read aloud in communal settings, blending performance, improvisation, and audience interaction. You can almost hear the rise and fall of voices around a fire, each word chosen to maximize suspense, each pause carefully timed to make hearts skip a beat. Even today, the cadence of a well-told story during Halloween borrows from these centuries-old techniques, ensuring that suspense and delight intertwine seamlessly. The oral tradition is equally important. Folk tales about haunted houses, witches, or mischievous spirits spread from village to village, often evolving with each retelling. You might imagine a group of children whispering under blankets, daring one another to recount the latest ghostly encounter, or to embellish an older story with a new, terrifying twist. Fringe historians argue that the mutable nature of these stories, how they change depending on who tells them, was an early form of social learning, teaching lessons about fear, courage, and morality while simultaneously encouraging creativity. You can feel that energy now, sensing how storytelling both instructs and entertains, a dual function that persists even in modern media. Halloween stories also incorporated elements of humor and exaggeration. Ghosts might be frightening, but they were often absurdly mischievous, playing pranks rather than inflicting real harm. Witches could be terrifying, yet their clumsy spells or ridiculous familiars elicited laughter alongside apprehension. This balance of fright and humor mirrors other Halloween traditions you've encountered. Jack-o'-lanterns, costumes, and playful tricks all straddle the line between fear and fun. You might chuckle at the mental image of a ghost trying to sneak past a vigilant cat, only to stumble comically, a detail that could easily have been part of a centuries-old oral tale, teaching listeners both caution and amusement. By the 19th century, literature began codifying the visual and thematic tropes we now associate with Halloween. Haunted mansions, spectral riders, and dark forests filled the imagination, providing inspiration for costumes, decorations, and even games. You can imagine how young readers, captivated by these stories, would translate their favorite scenes into play, pretending to be Ichabod Crane, a mischievous spirit, or a lurking specter. Fringe sources suggest that these enactments helped communities internalize and personalize the stories, making the frightening or supernatural a shared experience rather than a purely solitary one. Even in your own mind, reading or imagining these tales evokes the same mixture of suspense, anticipation, and delight. Storytelling also bridges the old and new Halloween traditions. The ancient tales of Samhain and All Hallows Eve, the playful ghost performances during Soling, and the Gothic literature of later centuries all merge into a continuous thread. Humans love to explore fear safely, to test courage, and to share the thrill of the unknown. You sense that same thread as you consider modern horror films, spooky podcasts, and ghostly YouTube videos, each inheriting techniques developed long before the electric light. Every whispered story or dramatic pause you experience on Halloween night is part of a centuries-long tradition, reminding you that narrative is not just entertainment. It is a way of connecting, learning, and collectively experiencing the thrill of shadows, suspense, and imagination. By the time you step away from the parlor, the fire now reduced to glowing embers, you realize that Halloween thrives on stories. They teach, warn, amuse, and excite, threading together centuries of human fascination with the unseen. Every tale, whether whispered, read aloud, or performed, carries the same heartbeat of anticipation. The thrill of stepping closer to the unknown, the gentle tug of fear and delight, and the enduring desire to share these experiences with others. In this way, storytelling remains one of Halloween's most enduring legacies, binding past to present, fear to amusement, and imagination to reality. The flickering embers of old stories give way to the cinematic shadows of Halloween, where movies have transformed fear into art and tradition. Imagine yourself sitting in a darkened theater, the faint smell of popcorn in the air, as the screen flickers to life with a shadowy figure creeping through foggy streets. Silent films like The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari introduced expressionistic horror, long before Halloween became a commercialized spectacle, showing audiences how lighting, sound, and timing could evoke suspense. Historians still argue whether early horror films shaped the public's perception of Halloween or merely amplified pre-existing fears, but it's clear that cinema became a crucial way to experience and codify the spooky atmosphere of the season. The influence of Halloween on film is as much about suggestion as it is about spectacle. Directors often drew from folklore, legends, and Gothic literature, blending them with visual tricks that amplified suspense. Fringe sources suggest that some filmmakers intentionally borrowed imagery from old All Hallows Eve rituals, like flickering fires, masked figures, or shadowy forests, to create an uncanny resonance for viewers. You might feel that thrill as a shadow flickers across the screen, unsure whether it's a cinematic effect or your imagination filling in the gaps. The same tension you felt in haunted houses or while bobbing for apples is replicated through frames of black and white, carefully timed music, and the subtle movement of props. Silent and early sound films also experimented with audience participation. In some screenings, viewers were encouraged to react vocally, gasping, laughing, or even shouting warnings to the characters on screen. You can almost imagine the electric atmosphere of a theater filled with nervous energy, the collective tension and release echoing centuries of communal Halloween experiences. Fringe historians suggest this early form of interactive horror reinforced social cohesion and allowed viewers to process fear in a shared environment. Today's jump scare tactics and immersive experiences owe a surprising debt to these origins, as the audience remains a participant in the narrative, not just a passive observer. Urban legends grew alongside cinema, feeding both the thrill of the unknown and the cultural vocabulary of Halloween. Movies popularized figures like vampires, zombies, and mad scientists, whose stories resonated with ancient fears of death, disease, and the supernatural. You might picture someone nervously clutching a blanket as a shadow moves just beyond the screen, heart racing in response to a centuries-old pattern of suspense, the anticipation of an unseen threat. Fringe sources note that filmmakers sometimes exaggerated myths for dramatic effect, creating hybrid traditions that mixed folklore, literature, and visual spectacle. A practice that continues today with franchises that reimagine classical monsters for modern audiences. The evolution of Halloween cinema also reflects cultural anxieties. Early horror films mirrored societal fears, plagues, moral decay, political unrest, packaged in stories of ghosts, monsters, and witches. Even contemporary Halloween films echo this tradition, translating collective apprehension into approachable entertainment. You can sense this historical layering as you watch a character navigate a foggy graveyard or a flickering house, recognizing echoes of centuries-old fears now presented through modern technology. It's a continuation of the same principle that animated children to wear masks, bob for apples, or whisper ghost stories. Fear is safe when mediated, thrilling when controlled, and communal when shared. Finally, cinema reinforces the cyclical nature of Halloween. Characters, tropes, and visual cues recycle old legends, ensuring that modern audiences, whether in theaters or streaming at home, connect with centuries of storytelling. You notice the parallels, the suspense of a darkened room, the anticipation of a lurking shadow, the cathartic thrill of relief, or playful terror. Every film, from silent classics to contemporary slasher flicks, carries forward the heartbeat of Halloween, a mix of dread, curiosity, humor, and shared experience. Even now, as you imagine the flicker of a projector casting ghostly shapes on the walls, you are participating in a tradition that spans centuries, where human fascination with the unknown continues to captivate, amuse, and gently unnerve. The cinematic shadows dissolve as you step into America, where Halloween evolved in unexpected and often peculiar ways. Picture yourself walking down a late 19th century main street, gas lamps flickering along wooden storefronts, children darting between porches with small baskets in hand. Halloween here is no longer a strictly spiritual festival. It's part spectacle, part social event, and part playground for imagination. Irish and Scottish immigrants bring their traditions across the Atlantic, but the holiday begins to take on uniquely American characteristics. Historians still debate whether this transformation was driven more by urbanization, industrialization, or the desire to create a safe outlet for youthful mischief, but the result is unmistakable. Halloween becomes a community-centered celebration. Early American Halloweens are a mix of chaos and charm. Young adults, teasing, mischievous, and eager for entertainment, roam streets playing pranks, tipping outhouses, ringing doorbells and running, or leaving small, harmless surprises for neighbors. You can almost hear the giggles echoing across cobblestones, mingling with shouts of mock indignation from those caught unawares. Fringe accounts suggest that some towns instituted elaborate, safe Halloween measures, trying to contain youthful energy while still preserving the thrill of the night. You can feel the tension yourself, the balance between harmless mischief and social order that has always been at the heart of the holiday. Costumes in America expand rapidly in scope and creativity. Pumpkins replace turnips, store-bought masks appear, and children, and increasingly adults, dress as figures drawn from folklore, literature, and eventually, popular culture. You might imagine a child proudly wearing a papier-mâché vampire mask, clutching a homemade candy bag, while an older sibling sneaks a sly peek at other costumes down the block, assessing competition in what could be considered an early form of trick-or-treat fashion. Fringe historians note that these public displays of creativity allowed for both individual expression and community engagement, a delicate social dance that echoes centuries of costuming traditions across Europe. Neighborhoods themselves begin to organize the holiday. Door-to-door trick-or-treating becomes safer and more predictable, and some towns even host parades or contests for best costumes and decorations. The sense of community deepens. Children navigate familiar streets, families gather, and local commerce begins to capitalize on the growing enthusiasm. You can almost smell the roasted nuts, pumpkin pies, and molasses cookies wafting from open windows, blending with the crisp autumn air. It's a full sensory experience, a layering of ritual, entertainment, and shared delight that extends the holiday beyond mere superstition into a cultural cornerstone. Commercialization takes root in surprising ways. By the early 20th century, manufacturers produce candy specifically for Halloween, and costume shops flourish in urban areas. Even local newspapers participate, publishing safety tips, ghost stories, and guides for children on how to navigate the streets. Fringe sources suggest that this commodification both preserved traditions and subtly reshaped them, emphasizing performance, appearance, and consumer participation over strictly ritualistic or spiritual concerns. You notice the parallels with earlier European practices. The playful mischief remains, but now it's intertwined with visual spectacle, competition, and material culture. By the time you walk past a modern American neighborhood, pumpkins glowing on porches, black cats peeking from garden shadows, and children dressed as witches, ghosts, or superheroes, it's clear how much Halloween has evolved. From spiritual festival to communal game, from protective ritual to commercial spectacle, the holiday adapts without losing its core, a celebration of curiosity, imagination, and the thrill of the unknown. Every doorbell ding, every rustle of leaves, every flicker of candlelight carries centuries of history, cultural negotiation, and playful suspense, all stitched into the fabric of Halloween as we recognize it today. You feel the legacy beneath your feet, a soft, familiar thrill that whispers across generations, inviting you to participate, to perform, and to imagine. As the streets of America fade behind you, the world opens to global Halloween traditions, revealing how customs travel, adapt, and sometimes transform entirely. Picture yourself stepping into Mexico during Dia de los Muertos, where marigolds blaze like golden fire and families prepare intricate altars with candles, food, and photographs of loved ones. Though this holiday occurs simultaneously with All Saints and All Souls Days, it's distinct from Halloween yet shares a fascination with spirits, remembrance, and festive interaction with the otherworldly. Historians still argue whether Halloween influenced Dia de los Muertos or vice versa, but it's clear that both celebrations reflect humanity's enduring desire to honor the dead while engaging creatively with mortality. In Mexico, sugar skulls, pan de muerto, and brightly colored paper decorations turn remembrance into a joyful spectacle. You can imagine the sensory richness, sweet smells, vibrant colors, music, and laughter mingling with solemn reflection. Fringe sources claim that certain rituals, such as inviting spirits to share meals or leaving gifts for children, echo the playful and communal spirit of Halloween. You feel that connection as if, despite centuries and continents apart, these rituals respond to the same human curiosity and imagination, blending fear, memory, and joy into a single night. Across Europe, traditions continue to diverge. In Austria and parts of Germany, for instance, children dress in masks representing various spirits or demons, a direct continuation of medieval practices. In Italy, La Befana, a kindly witch delivering treats, combines elements of folklore, Christian narrative, and seasonal festivity. You might chuckle imagining children cautiously approaching a robed figure with a broom, uncertain whether to expect candy, a gentle scolding, or a mischievous trick. Fringe historians note that such hybrid customs often arise from the convergence of pre-existing local beliefs with the imported or evolving Halloween narrative, illustrating how adaptable human imagination can be. In Asian countries like Japan, Halloween has been imported largely through popular culture, yet it adopts unique twists. Streets bustle with cosplay, elaborate themed parties, and vibrant parades, transforming the night into a spectacle of performance rather than spiritual observance. You can almost feel the buzz of energy, the shared excitement, and the creative display of identity and artistry. Here, Halloween demonstrates a remarkable flexibility, where the holiday's visual, performative, and playful elements thrive even in the absence of centuries-old superstition. Fringe accounts suggest that the emphasis on spectacle mirrors the theatrical roots of earlier European costuming traditions, reinforcing the idea that performance and communal engagement are central to the celebration, wherever it occurs. Even within the same country, Halloween evolves regionally. In Canada, trick-or-treating closely mirrors American practice, but certain areas preserve old European games or customs, like apple bobbing or fortune-telling. In Ireland and Scotland, where many traditions originated, Halloween retains a mixture of old and new. Bonfires still burn, games and storytelling continue, and neighborhoods now host modern, playful interpretations of ancient rituals. You can sense the continuity across time and space, noticing that while the form may change, pumpkin lanterns replacing turnips, costumes reflecting contemporary media, the underlying human impulses remain: curiosity, fear, creativity, and community. By the time you leave these global celebrations behind, you realize that Halloween is simultaneously local and universal, old and new, solemn and playful. Each country, each village, each family interprets the night according to its history, resources, and imagination, yet all share the same fascination with the unknown, the celebratory, and the uncanny. You feel the threads connecting marigolds in Mexico to carved pumpkins in America, elaborate cosplay in Japan to shadowy masks in Europe. A tapestry woven from centuries of human engagement with mystery, performance, and playful fear. Halloween, in its many forms, becomes a celebration of creativity and connection, reminding you that the night belongs to all who dare to participate in its magic. The global colors and flavors of Halloween give way to a more mischievous, chaotic aspect: pranks, mischief, and mayhem. Imagine yourself walking through an early 20th century town in America or Europe, where streets are alive with children and young adults plotting harmless, but elaborate, tricks. From tipping over outhouses and smearing chalk on doors to ringing bells and darting away, Halloween has always carried a playful streak of rebellion. Historians still argue whether these pranks were an essential part of the festival's survival or a tolerated nuisance, but the pattern is unmistakable. The night encourages a suspension of ordinary rules, allowing humans to explore mischief safely. Pranks weren't limited to minor tricks. Some fringe accounts describe entire towns being temporarily invaded by masked youths, who would perform coordinated stunts, rolling barrels, blocking streets, or even engaging in mock battles with rival neighborhoods. You can almost hear the laughter and shouting echoing off brick walls, the combination of thrill, risk, and camaraderie blending into a potent night-long experience. These antics mirror ancient Samhain practices, where chaos and ritual coexisted, highlighting how Halloween has always balanced fear, fun, and social experimentation. Even today, when teenagers replace pumpkins with toilet-papered trees or door knockers with sticky notes, the impulse remains the same: mischief, often intersected with performance. Young pranksters might dress in grotesque or humorous costumes, turning their stunts into theatrical spectacles. You can imagine a group of children portraying witches or spirits while performing synchronized tricks, their faces hidden behind masks, amplifying suspense for unsuspecting neighbors. Fringe historians note that these early performances helped maintain social order by providing structured outlets for energy and creativity, turning potential anarchy into controlled entertainment. It's striking how this blend of humor and slight menace continues in modern Halloween traditions, from playful scares to elaborate haunted attractions. Food and offerings were sometimes entwined with mischief, too. A clever prank might involve leaving a surprising treat, or a slightly spicy or bitter variation, on a neighbor's doorstep, blending humor with ritual. You might picture children giggling behind a fence as a confused recipient picks up a cleverly disguised snack, the tension and release a small thrill echoing centuries-old customs. Historians suggest that such acts of controlled chaos allowed communities to explore fear, surprise, and anticipation, teaching lessons in caution, creativity, and social negotiation under the guise of fun. By the time you wander past modern neighborhoods, with jack-o'-lanterns grinning benignly and candy bowls strategically placed, you realize that pranks are a thread connecting centuries of Halloween participants. Whether rolling barrels, tipping furniture, or staging a haunted display, humans continue to engage in playful rebellion under the protective umbrella of tradition. You can feel the thrill yourself, the anticipation, the laughter, the gentle adrenaline, reminding you that Halloween is not only about superstition or sweetness but about exploring boundaries safely, sharing experiences, and testing courage in playful, communal ways. Mischief, in its many forms, remains one of the holiday's most enduring and joyful legacies. The laughter from pranks slowly fades, and now your attention drifts toward Halloween superstitions, those curious beliefs about death, spirits, and luck that still linger quietly beneath the surface of modern celebrations. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a dimly lit village green, the fog curling around your ankles, as villagers whisper warnings about what will happen if certain rules are broken. Never cross paths with a black cat at night, never spill salt near a doorway, never whistle while walking past a shadowed field. These superstitions are at once playful and deeply rooted in human psychology. Historians still debate whether Halloween superstitions originated from practical caution, ritualistic observation, or pure storytelling, but the enduring effect is clear. Humans love rules with teeth, even if only imaginary. Some superstitions focus on mortality. Apples, mirrors, and candle flames were once used to glimpse the future or predict death, while ordinary household items could become talismans against misfortune. You can picture a family carefully placing salt on windowsills or a child tossing an apple peel over their shoulder, heart hammering as the peel curls into an initial that supposedly foretells a future spouse. Fringe accounts suggest that some of these practices were elaborate psychological exercises, allowing participants to confront uncertainty and control anxiety in a playful, ritualized way. You feel the same tension now when performing small Halloween rituals, even if only in jest, a thrill tinged with reverence, a brush with the mysterious. Other superstitions centered on animals and natural phenomena. Bats, owls, and spiders were often interpreted as omens, their nocturnal presence taken as a message from the spirit world. In rural villages, seeing a particular creature might mean a household would experience fortune or misfortune, disease or abundance. You can almost hear whispers passing between neighbors, each story slightly altered, yet each reinforcing the sense that the natural and supernatural worlds are entwined on this night. Fringe historians note that these beliefs sometimes reinforced communal vigilance. Children were taught to be alert, adults maintained order, and the collective imagination thrived, ensuring social cohesion while heightening suspense. Luck and misfortune played equally large roles. Breaking a mirror, spilling salt, or stepping on a threshold incorrectly might bring bad luck, or perhaps just a polite warning from elders. Some communities created elaborate luck games on Halloween, often involving apples or nuts, where the outcome supposedly predicted future happiness or prosperity. Imagine a group of young people gathering around a barrel of water, whispering spells or chants, laughing nervously as each participant's fate is revealed in subtle shifts of floating objects. Fringe sources suggest that these games were not only entertainment but also subtle training in patience, observation, and decision-making, a form of social and psychological education cleverly disguised as ritual. Even today, traces of these superstitions persist, sometimes as casual sayings, other times as playful rituals among children. You notice that modern Halloween decorations, fortune-telling games, and storytelling all echo these centuries-old beliefs. The night encourages participants to suspend disbelief, explore uncertainty, and engage with the unknown safely. You might feel a familiar thrill, the tingling awareness that misfortune could be around the corner, tempered by the playful context of the holiday. Superstitions in this way provide structure for fear, curiosity, and social interaction, turning potentially paralyzing anxieties into shared delight and gentle suspense. By the time you step away from the whispers and the flickering lanterns, you realize that Halloween superstitions are far more than quaint relics. They are tools for engaging imagination, teaching social lessons, and connecting generations across centuries. Every apple bob, candlelit window, and whispered warning carries echoes of a past that loved to flirt with fear, explore the unknown, and revel in the thrill of the mysterious. You sense that continuity, that human need to navigate uncertainty through ritual and story, woven quietly through every shadow, flicker, and playful scare. Superstition, it seems, is Halloween's subtle heartbeat, guiding you gently through the dark with curiosity, caution, and wonder. The soft thrill of superstition fades into the tactile and symbolic world of masks and masquerades, where the simple act of covering your face opens doors to identity, fear, and social inversion. Picture yourself stepping into a dimly lit ballroom or village square, the glow of candlelight bouncing off painted masks and elaborately draped cloaks. Historically, masks were more than costume. They allowed humans to explore hidden facets of identity, to temporarily escape social norms, and, at times, to interact with the supernatural. Historians still debate whether masks were primarily ritualistic, theatrical, or social tools, but it's clear they were profoundly versatile, serving multiple purposes across centuries of All Hallows' Eve celebrations. Masks allowed participants to embody spirits, monsters, or exaggerated human traits, turning the night into a playful theater. Some fringe accounts describe masks with grotesque expressions designed to frighten wandering spirits, while others had humorous or satirical designs meant to mock societal figures or local gossip. You might imagine a child peeking out from beneath a twisted papier-mâché visage, eyes wide with both anticipation and trepidation, while elders smile knowingly at the interplay of fear and comedy. Even today, this duality survives in the most elaborate Halloween masks, from terrifyingly realistic monsters to exaggerated, cartoonish caricatures. The psychological function of masks is equally fascinating. By hiding their faces, participants gained a form of anonymity that allowed experimentation with behavior, speech, and movement, safely exploring mischief or fear without the normal social consequences. You can feel the subtle thrill of this as you imagine stepping into a mask yourself, suddenly able to move through space in ways you normally wouldn't, performing exaggerated gestures or whispering playful threats, all under the cloak of anonymity. Fringe historians argue that this temporary role reversal helped communities negotiate social hierarchies, allowing the young, lower classes, or marginalized individuals to express themselves in ways normally restricted by society. Masks also played a symbolic role in rituals. Certain designs were believed to attract protective spirits, confuse malevolent ones, or convey messages to the unseen. Imagine a village elder carefully instructing children to wear a mask with specific colors, shapes, or symbols, their instructions carrying both practical and mystical weight. Fringe sources suggest that these symbolic meanings varied widely by region and family, creating a rich tapestry of local lore and ritualized performance. You sense how powerful this is. A simple object, worn on a face, can carry centuries of cultural, spiritual, and psychological significance, merging play, belief, and social commentary in one small act. In modern Halloween, the legacy of masks persists everywhere, from simple face paint to complex latex creations, bridging the ancient and contemporary. Costumes and masks allow participants to play, frighten, and perform while safely experimenting with identity and suspense. You notice that even subtle gestures, turning a head slowly, shifting eyes behind a mask, or adjusting an expression, carry echoes of centuries of tradition. Every mask is not just a disguise but a conversation with history, a reminder of the dual human impulses to explore fear and creativity, and a bridge between the mystical, the playful, and the socially instructive. By the time you step away from the masked crowd, you carry with you the knowledge that Halloween masks are far more than decoration. They are tools for imagination, social negotiation, ritual protection, and storytelling. Every flicker of candlelight across a painted visage, every exaggerated grin or frown, connects you to generations who have used anonymity and symbolism to engage with mystery, fear, and play. Masks, in this way, encapsulate the delicate dance of Halloween itself, allowing humans to inhabit shadows and stories, to explore identity and imagination, and to celebrate a night where the boundaries between the ordinary and the extraordinary blur delightfully and safely. The tactile thrill of masks leads naturally to the modern obsession with pumpkin spice and contemporary Halloween rituals, where scent, flavor, and atmosphere combine to create a uniquely immersive experience. Picture yourself entering a cozy kitchen or cafe in late October, the warm, spicy aroma of cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves, and ginger wrapping around you like a soft blanket. This sensory landscape, so familiar today, has surprising roots. While medieval feasts and harvest festivals emphasized taste and smell, modern pumpkin spice and themed treats transform those ancient sensory experiences into a widespread cultural phenomenon. Historians still debate whether the obsession with pumpkin spice is purely nostalgic, commercially driven, or a subconscious echo of harvest rituals, but its impact on Halloween culture is undeniable. The contemporary rituals of Halloween extend far beyond food. Neighborhoods glow with carved pumpkins, string lights, and themed decorations that turn ordinary streets into immersive experiences. You can imagine the layered sensory cues, the flicker of candlelight inside a carved pumpkin, the subtle aroma of autumn leaves mixed with candle wax, and the rustle of costumes as children move through the street. Fringe accounts note that these orchestrated sensory experiences may satisfy an ancient human need for ritualized seasonal engagement, providing both excitement and comfort. You feel it yourself, the sense of anticipation heightened by smell, sight, and movement, a full-body experience echoing centuries of harvest and festival traditions. Pumpkin spice itself is fascinating in its cultural significance. The combination of flavors is carefully tuned to evoke warmth, nostalgia, and a sense of ritual, even in the absence of formal ceremony. From lattes to cookies, candles to home decor, pumpkin spice signals the arrival of the season, subtly guiding behavior and mood. Fringe historians suggest that flavoring traditions, like scented candles and spice treats, are modern echoes of old rituals where taste and smell were used to mark transitions, honor the harvest, or engage with the spiritual world. You can almost imagine ancestors stirring aromatic spices into a simple porridge, unaware that centuries later, the aroma would evoke the very same feelings of comfort and anticipation. The modern Halloween ritual also emphasizes communal participation and performative display. Costume parties, neighborhood decorating contests, and public events transform ordinary spaces into shared experiences, blending creativity, spectacle, and social interaction. You might picture a suburban street alive with glowing pumpkins, spooky sounds, and children laughing as they move from house to house, their collective excitement heightening the sensory and emotional impact. Fringe sources suggest that these contemporary performances reflect an instinctive human desire to manipulate environment, sensation, and attention collectively, creating a controlled but exhilarating encounter with the uncanny. You feel that thrill as if centuries of Halloween energy flow through every glowing lantern and scented candle. Even small, personal rituals, like arranging a decorated porch, selecting a themed beverage, or playing eerie background music, echo ancient practices of marking the season, honoring change, and engaging senses to reinforce cultural meaning. The deliberate creation of atmosphere, whether through scent, taste, or sight, mirrors medieval bonfires, jack-o'-lanterns, and seasonal offerings, translating the sacred and playful energy of earlier Halloween celebrations into a modern, largely secular context. You sense that continuity. Every flicker, whiff, and spice-infused sip connects you to centuries of human imagination, adaptation, and seasonal joy. By the time you step back into the night, pumpkin spice lingering faintly in your memory, you realize that modern Halloween rituals, whether shared or personal, sensory or performative, are part of a long, evolving lineage. Every scented candle, carved pumpkin, or themed treat is more than a fleeting trend. It's a link to ancestral impulses, a celebration of creativity, and an immersive reminder that Halloween continues to engage mind, body, and community. The night, in its modern guise, remains a playground for imagination, a laboratory for sensory delight, and a ritual space where fear, play, and celebration meet seamlessly, just as they did centuries ago. The warmth and aroma of pumpkin spice begins to fade as you turn your attention to Halloween economics, where commercialization and commerce intertwine with tradition in surprising ways. Picture yourself walking through a modern suburban street in late October, the sidewalks alive with families carrying candy-filled buckets, stores brimming with costumes, decorations, and themed foods, and the air humming with the quiet excitement of collective preparation. Halloween has grown into a multi-billion-dollar industry, yet beneath the surface, you can trace the subtle threads connecting today's commercial spectacle to centuries-old practices of communal sharing, ritual offerings, and performance. Historians still argue whether commercialization has diluted the holiday's essence or simply amplified its reach, but the economic impact is undeniably staggering. Candy sales alone provide a fascinating lens into this transformation. From early homemade confections to mass-produced chocolates, the shift reflects both technological innovation and cultural adaptation. You might imagine a candy manufacturer in the early 20th century experimenting with new flavors or molds, anticipating the thrill that children would feel when encountering candy corn, chocolate pumpkins, or individually wrapped treats. Fringe sources suggest that some early marketing campaigns intentionally leveraged the excitement of suspense, drawing on centuries-old associations of reward and anticipation that existed in medieval souling and trick-or-treating. You can almost feel the psychological continuity. The thrill of performance rewarded with sweets persists, now scaled up to a commercial level. Costume sales are another major driver. Once simple disguises crafted from scraps of cloth or vegetable skins, they have evolved into elaborate, mass-produced ensembles inspired by folklore, literature, cinema, and pop culture. You can picture store shelves lined with witches, ghosts, superheroes, and movie icons, each choice offering a way for individuals to participate in shared narratives while expressing personal creativity. Fringe historians argue that the commercial availability of costumes has democratized the tradition, allowing more participants to engage safely, while also subtly shaping expectations and trends. You sense the same tension that has threaded through Halloween history. Personal expression mediated by communal norms, amplified now by market forces. Neighborhood and municipal involvement further expands the economic ecosystem. Street decorations, lighting, public events, and themed attractions all create opportunities for commerce, while simultaneously fostering community participation. Imagine families coordinating elaborate displays, local shops sponsoring contests, and children eagerly racing from house to house, the subtle pressure to participate driving both excitement and consumer behavior. Fringe sources suggest that such organized spectacle mirrors medieval community rituals, where performance, competition, and participation reinforced social bonds while providing entertainment. Economics and tradition intertwine, creating a multi-layered Halloween experience that engages imagination, anticipation, and local culture simultaneously. Marketing experiments, too, are fascinating. Companies frequently introduce limited edition products, themed experiences, or pop-up attractions timed precisely for the Halloween season, leveraging scarcity, novelty, and sensory appeal to maximize participation. You might imagine a scented candle, a seasonal drink, or a thematic game designed not just to sell but to evoke that quintessential Halloween thrill, suspense, delight, and communal celebration. Fringe historians argue that this mirrors ancient ritual strategies. Humans have always been drawn to novelty, performance, and reward, whether for spiritual, social, or commercial purposes. Even today, the emotional and sensory strategies remain consistent, demonstrating that Halloween's enduring appeal rests as much on human psychology as on any cultural artifact. By the time you step back into the quiet streets, watching pumpkins glow softly on porches and children darting along sidewalks, you realize that Halloween economics is more than dollars and cents. It is a modern manifestation of centuries-old human tendencies, the desire for communal experience, creative expression, suspense, and reward. Every candy bar, costume, and decoration carries echoes of ancient practices, commercialized but fundamentally human, connecting past and present through participation, imagination, and shared delight. The economy of Halloween, in this sense, becomes not just a measure of profit, but a reflection of cultural continuity, ingenuity, and the enduring joy of celebrating the mysterious and playful night together. The glow of commercialized streets and bustling neighborhoods now fades, guiding you toward Halloween's legacy and lullaby close, a place where past and present merge in subtle reflection. Imagine yourself walking slowly through a quiet street after the trick-or-treaters have gone home, the scent of fallen leaves and faint candle smoke lingering in the air. Every carved pumpkin, flickering candle, and whispered ghost story is a connection to centuries of human imagination and ritual. From Samhain bonfires to modern pumpkin spice lattes, Halloween has evolved, yet the essence, curiosity, communal thrill, and playful engagement with the unknown, remains remarkably consistent. Historians still debate which traditions carry the most authentic lineage, but the continuity of human experience is undeniable. Even the smallest details carry echoes of history. Black cats perched silently near porches, masks left resting against doors, and the subtle rustle of costumes along the sidewalk are more than decoration. They are sensory threads linking past celebrations to present ones. Fringe sources suggest that Halloween's enduring appeal lies in its ability to balance fear, play, and social cohesion, creating experiences that are emotionally resonant and psychologically satisfying. You can feel that resonance yourself as you observe the quiet aftermath, the subtle energy of the night lingering like a soft whisper across time and space. The legacy of Halloween is also deeply communal. Whether through storytelling, shared rituals, or simple acts of giving candy, the holiday fosters a sense of connection. You might remember the laughter from pranks, the thrill of bobbing for apples, or the suspense of trick-or-treating, the way anticipation, performance, and reward intertwine to create shared memory. Fringe historians argue that Halloween continues to serve as a form of cultural rehearsal, teaching courage, social negotiation, and creativity in a playful, low-stakes environment. You notice how this communal thread persists today. Streets alive with children, neighbors interacting, families performing rituals together, all echoing practices that are hundreds of years old. As you look around, the sensory details soften, transforming from thrilling and sharp to gentle and comforting. The crisp smell of autumn leaves, the soft glow of candlelight, and the faint laughter fading in the distance form a lullaby of continuity. You might imagine the Samhain bonfires, the medieval masked revelers, the playful mischief of early American trick-or-treaters, and the modern spectacle of costume parties and glowing pumpkins, all folding into a single, fluid experience. Halloween, in this sense, is not only a holiday but a living memory, a celebration of human imagination and connection. Finally, the night invites reflection. Every tradition, from the grotesque jack-o'-lantern to the gentle passing of candy, carries lessons in courage, creativity, and communal engagement. Even the smallest, seemingly mundane rituals are part of a centuries-old conversation between the living and the imagined, the real and the playful, the known and the unknown. You can feel the quiet satisfaction of participating in this lineage, a gentle thrill that binds you to generations of humans who, like you, have wandered through autumn nights with curiosity, courage, and delight. Halloween is both a window to the past and a mirror of human nature, reminding you that the thrill of shadows and stories is timeless, subtle, and infinitely comforting. The night has slowed, and the thrill of trick-or-treating, haunted houses, and mischievous pranks gently softens into a calm, reflective hush. Imagine yourself walking along a quiet street, the last of the flickering jack-o'-lanterns casting warm, amber light on the pavement, their faces softening in the dark. The air is cooler now, carrying faint scents of autumn leaves, smoke from distant chimneys, and the faint spice of pumpkin treats. Every shadow feels slower, every sound lighter, as though the world itself is exhaling after a long, delightful night. You notice the subtle rhythm of your own breath, the gentle rustle of leaves beneath your feet, and the quiet anticipation of returning home, carrying the soft echo of centuries of human imagination. In these last moments, Halloween becomes less about spectacle and more about continuity. The stories, rituals, costumes, and sensory experiences of the night are reminders of the delicate balance humans have always struck between fear and play, curiosity and caution, participation and observation. You might think of the flickering bonfires of Samhain, the mischievous pranks of early American streets, the carefully carved pumpkins, the whispered ghost stories, and even the modern lattes and scented candles, all threads woven into a long, shared tapestry. Fringe historians note that these layers of tradition demonstrate how humans use ritual and imagination to navigate uncertainty, find joy, and connect across generations. The quiet of the night is reassuring. Shadows no longer threaten, but invite gentle exploration of memory and imagination. Each glowing pumpkin, each subtle whisper of wind, each lingering scent of spice is a soft nudge to recall not just Halloween's history, but the creativity, courage, and wonder it inspires. You realize that the night, in its layered complexity, mirrors life itself. Moments of thrill and suspense, balanced by calm reflection and warmth. In this gentle cadence, you feel a subtle bond with countless others who have wandered through October nights, exploring the mysteries of darkness, imagination, and community. As your senses slow, you carry the soft lessons of the holiday with you. That fear can be playful, mystery can be comforting, and tradition can be both ancient and ever-renewed. You feel the quiet thrill of participation, the calm satisfaction of understanding, and the gentle pull of memory, all blending into one harmonious night. The candlelight dims, the streets are still, and you are left with a lingering sense of wonder and continuity, a soft lullaby of history and imagination that cradles you towards sleep. Halloween, in all its forms, is at once thrilling and comforting, a reminder that even in the shadows, there is delight, connection, and enduring human curiosity.